Hola amigos, ¿qué tal? Bienvenidos a una interview más. Yo soy Fernando Pérez Guajardo, facilitador visual en Tintero, y el día de hoy les adelanto que el tema va a estar muy interesante, ya que vamos a ver cómo es importante generar espacios de interacción lúdica, cómo el juego, la improvisación, la escucha activa son fundamentales para, si ustedes quieren aplicar visual thinking con sus equipos, estimular la creatividad. Aquí les vamos a pasar muy buenos tips. Y para eso tengo un entrevistado que está al otro lado del océano, efectivamente está en Londres, y es mi amigo y colega Peter Morey, quien es ilustrador y facilitador gráfico. Hello, Peter. How are you?
Hi, Fernando. I'm well, thank you. Hi.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon. Oh, well, yeah. Afternoon here, morning there, I think. Yeah, hello.
Well, I was telling people that your topic it's gonna be about play and display. How improvisation, interpretation help mm, teams and help, let's say, coaches and leaders to encourage creativity and help people to think out of the box in visual thinking activities can be a lot of helpful. But please, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So hello. My name is Peter Morey. I would describe myself as a cartoonist, and the majority of my work is visual scribing or graphic recording, and it's a key element in graphic facilitation and a tool for facilitators at various workshops, sometimes conferences and different sorts of events, where what I do is either a part of, I would say, the documentation process, or directly plugs into the live facilitation right there. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's a very vague kind of description. I hope we can fill this out as we go along from some of my perspectives on like how I use playfulness and the display element, the performance elements of visual scribing. Yeah. So that's me. Oh, wait, further background information. So I studied originally, I studied philosophy. So that maybe is the thinking element to the whole thing. So applied thinking, maybe. And I was actually a language teacher for a little while. So I have an interest in language, and then did a master's in illustration. So, and my speciality is cartooning, and I wanted to bring those things together, and the perfect synthesis of those things is visual scribing. So there's a thinking element, there's the live engagement with an audience or with people, or in an educational setting more often than not, and the cartooning. So I'm quite keen on, as a practitioner, building a sophisticated visual language and sharing that with people. Yeah.
That was a holistic description of your profile. I mean,
yeah.
Okay, this is very interesting. Bring together the part of the philosophy, the way to understand the way that people think, and help them to depict it visually, understand the way that people learn. Okay, it's very quite interesting your work. But Peter, what do you think if we start doing the visual scribing of your ideas?
Yeah, fab, let's go. I'm looking forward to this.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah. When you're making visual responses to speech and group discussions, and sometimes structured activities, sometimes less structured activities or discussion, adaptation, the group. So you bring in humor, you can bring in elements of visual storytelling to help frame what they're saying. And I suppose that's where having some context around what the group is doing and a briefing allows you to sort of align with their aims and goals and where they're at that particular point in time. So quite a rambling way of describing yes and, but that's the way I see it, with this sort of visual scribing where you're talking about visual improvisation. Really important, really, really important. It brings levity, a lightness of touch, while also discussing some quite serious matters or quite important things for the group. They could be big projects that they're discussing, or important issues within a company or other organization. So the humor can help when used in the right ways. I saying this, I think a counterpoint for when humor can be used badly is I sometimes find when I'm doing this, say for example, if you picture the scene, say I'm scribing at a conference and I have a big wall space and I'm drawing with pens. You're very present as a cartoonist or visual practitioner in that context, and you want to represent people in the right ways. When you use humor, sometimes people can interpret what you're doing if you're using cartoons as a caricaturist, and they don't make fun of them. So I think treading lightly on when using humor is important there. That the humor serves not a kind of personal attack or anything like that, but like it reflects on or works around the things that people are saying. Yes. I'm talking about humor quite a lot now. I realize I didn't intend to, but a lot of how I've heard my personal journey into doing this, how I learned to make illustrated responses to what people say. How I learned how to do this was through going to comedy shows and drawing what the comedians were saying. Mm-hmm. So I learned a lot about storytelling from comedians, I would say. Yeah. And obviously you see comedians using humor and their particular brand or style of it to make points about things. And maybe they have certain missions to change the world or whatever through their humor. So I think it can be put to use. Yes. But more than that, having an underpinning of the visual storytelling to support this kind of visual response. Say I'm there in the room and I'm drawing onto a big wall. I want to have some basics down, like being able to work with character and setting, and kind of, the notion that you're telling stories over a campfire is a nice place to get to, but
visual storytelling as a campfire.
Yeah, I mean specifically the big wall that I might be drawing on, or in what you're doing now with the digital version of that.
Visual storytelling is like this fire that we gather around. Yeah, it's the space that people brings their presence. The space where people is honest about what they're saying. Transparency. Yeah. It can be shown in through visual storytelling.
Absolutely, and that image immediately brings to mind for me like cave painting. You know, it's as basic as that and fundamental as that. You can imagine, like a tribe planning a hunt. They might drawing it by the fire in a cave the night before going out on a hunt, which is important for living. So it's that space to discuss and plan, and I think that's quite apt, because a lot of these, I mean, I like to think that what I do, visual scribe, I think there's an element of being adaptable to any and every setting that you get hired to go and draw. But a lot of these, a lot of places that I find myself, a lot of the settings, they're strategy discussion. So that campfire, you can imagine, could be the night before a big thing for the group, and that's a very primal, it's a very primal thing, very fundamental, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool, cool. That yeah, you've used you're thinking that same way as well. That's awesome. That's so cool. So how does that link back to my play and display? I suppose that there's a playfulness in making drawings,
Mm-hmm.
and the display is the sharing element. And I think like cave paintings, the visual language can be very straightforward. Pictograms, it can get quite fancy and elaborate, but I think as long as the fundamental point is to communicate, then it's very effective. Yeah. And then as a personal thing, with my background in illustration and cartooning, I like using that as a way of refining my technique. Each iteration, each job that I go and draw at, I can have fun with the tools that I have at my disposal and make them stronger ultimately over the long run. So I like that element.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Peter,
opportunities. Yeah.
What recommendations can you give people to develop their visual language? Because sometimes people ask me, okay, but what if I draw something that it doesn't resonate with what people think in the room? Because probably I draw one thing that may represent the term that fits the best for me, but probably there's another person in the room that maybe disagree. You know? What do you?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Yeah, I would say be flexible with your visual language, or try to be flexible. So obviously with this digital tool that you're using and other apps and things, you can erase as you go along and redraw. So interactivity with the group is always good, and admitting that you're not what you're drawing isn't the story, it's a story. So the visual storytelling is an interpretation, it's subjective. When I have a huge board and I'm using pens, I use sticky labels to stick over it if I really miss the point. And just being aware of that. And so often I'm going into contexts where I'm just not an expert in the subject matter. I'm not really there to be an expert in the subject matter. I'm there to report what's being said, report it out in visuals. That's my expertise. So yeah. And another thing is if you don't have the capacity to erase, or you think you've done a really cool drawing, which I would advise not to be too wedded to doing a cool drawing, but it's always fun. You can add interpretations onto it and change it and develop it. That's another really great thing, is you're sharing process. You're not just sharing the final image. And inviting people into that process, while sometimes painful, it can be.
Yeah, because people sometimes feel very pressure because they think they need to draw everything. Sure. And they need to be reminded, as a visual facilitator, I think it's your job to remind them that it's all about the content and the context. Yeah. Sure. As I want to recall, like Sophia Liang, a colleague of ours, she says, content is the king, context is the queen.
That's nice.
Yeah, and it's something that it resonates with what you're saying. There's no problem with adding some interpretation. I mean, the idea is to create a visual knowledge tool. Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, it's not that you're going to exhibit the work at the Tate Modern Museum. Yeah. I mean, it's all about. You remember that that what you are creating is something useful for your group, for all of us.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree with that entirely. The more technique that you can bring in from cartooning and illustration. Sometimes the more engaging it can be, but that should never be the primary goal, in my opinion. The primary goal is, as you said, to capture content and share it with the group, which is interesting with drawing at these events. Sometimes you become quite embedded in the context, so i.e. the culture of the place that you're drawing at, that you can look back, say, at something I've drawn at an event a few years ago. I could look back on it and not know, what was that about? But because I was there, it rejigs my memory that maybe an outsider wouldn't connect with it as strongly. So there's an element of having been there and experienced this thing being created to represent the group or represent the discussion or the knowledge that we share. Yeah, cool. That was really interesting. It's something I need to remind myself of many times. Yeah, because I do think that there can be an element of certain jobs where the interpretation of the client can be that you're there to make pretty images, and that's very flattering, because oh cool, I made a cool drawing, but sometimes that adds an additional pressure, so there can be a double pressure to capture perfect content and then perfect images too. And that's a really nice phrase. I'm not exhibiting this at the tape. I'm going to use that.
Yeah,
that's great. Fantastic. And also, saying something like that encourages other people there to use drawing, to use visual thinking as well. To not be put off.
To not be what?
To not be put off. To feel that they can also draw something as a way of capturing or capturing knowledge or thinking through an idea, and they can use it too. It doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, it shouldn't be. That's the point. Yeah. So I suppose that links back. I'm trying to link it back to my title. Improvisation is it's all about saying well. It's a sort of anti-perfectionism. Oh, and also, your question was about if you feel that you're drawing something, and what if this is my interpretation? It's not what people are thinking. Is what they don't agree with me. I think there's more tools in the pictures at your disposal. You can write. I mean, as a cartoonist, there's about the meeting of words and pictures. So you can always write things, speech bubbles, thought bubbles, captions, things like that. There's a relationship between the words and the pictures, and then you get a kind of flow to the image, which helps it be readable and engage. I suppose, what am I thinking? Because I haven't spoken too much about the kind of performative elements that comes into it with improvisation.
The kind of what?
Performative element.
Okay.
In this, and I've struggled with this sometimes.
Yeah.
That you're kind of on display when you're drawing, and that can be a block as well. Like it can, like the fear of the blank page, but times however many people there are in the room, because you're on display. Like, oh, I don't want to mess this up. I tried to rationalize that. I tried to think of it's not really a performance. It's a serving of the group by sharing, and that helps overcome the nerves. Like I think you put it here, it's our story, not your story. So it's not about, as the visual facilitator, as a visual scribe, it's not about me. There is, when the performance becomes interaction, that's a nice thing. It doesn't always happen, but for example, if somebody does come up to you at the wall where you're drawing and says, oh, I think it could just be, oh, you've made a spelling mistake, and then you change it. They say, oh, this is, I've had an effect on this directly. This is our thing. You get that interaction, and then maybe it sparks conversation based on that. I mean, at the very least, it's a way of recording and reporting and remembering. But when that kind of thing happens, it becomes something again. It has another value to it. Engagement, live engagement. Yeah. Mistakes. I think the mistakes, they can come in different forms. Sometimes it's purely about the craft. So, for example, spelling mistakes. I always do this thing. I don't always do it. I try to avoid doing this thing because it happened to me once, and it got picked up on in a big way. Which was when I do ing. I think it was the word learnings, because you get lost in the board and you're trying to draw very close to it. I did ing, and then you can just do an infinite amount of ings because learnings. I see the N and I want to put an ing. So that kind of spelling mistake is quite common for me. I suppose key mistakes might be knowing when, getting the right balance of like person and what they say. So I think what they say should always be more important than a representation of them on a page. Sometimes people can react strongly, or if it's a very sensitive environment, say if I'm working with I know patient advocates within a health organization, they might not want to be represented. They might even have a certain rule at an event, like or a discussion or a debate, which I think is called what's it called? Chatham House Rules, I think I've heard, which is not making any statement attributable to any one specific person at the event.
Okay.
So when I hear that, I have to be very aware that I don't want to make it too traceable, each statement too traceable. So then the whole of the story then becomes sort of unattributable to any particular specific person. And then I try to avoid drawing a person. So things like that. So in those kind of settings, caricature is often a very sensitive thing to do. And it's just being aware. Again, I think that comes down to empathy. So keeping empathetic, probably the rule. Sounds easy, but it's not. Another key thing which is linked to that is sometimes, sometimes I have to remind myself that listening is the more important skill than the drawing in this kind of work. And I think a key mistake there to fill out that point is that, like your question earlier about what if you feel what you've drawn isn't representing the speaker or the group. I think it can be easy when you're drawing to get lost in the drawing or doing a cool drawing, and that's very natural, I think. But so being very aware that the majority of the skill is actually listening. Can't think of any other mistakes. Lots of things like lots of like technical things. Like maybe if you're using paint pens, try not to smudge. And maybe you can develop a strategy not to smudge.
You're talking about a specific kind of markers.
Yeah. I use Posca pens. That's my main Posca.
Oh, okay.
Other paint pens are available, just so it's not advertising. But yeah, I use paint pens the majority of the time, because if I'm not using it, it's not digital scribing. And they can smudge. They need some time to dry. The other thing is running out of sticky labels when doing that kind of work. So I use these white sticky labels to erase mistakes.
Yeah.
So try not to run out.
Yeah. I mean, it's the information is very that you're giving us is very valuable because probably those kind of things that we take we take for granted because we don't think it's really necessary to think about those kind of issues when we are meeting. But I think it's very important to consider that.
Yeah.
Because you never know when something is not working and you need something, you need a backup, right?
Sure. Yeah. I thought of something else now as well. Wait, is it gone? Oh no, yeah. So another key thing is discuss the logistics with the client ahead of the event, so that they know exactly where you're positioning yourself. I mean, I guess the key thing there is not to distract any speakers or any of the main purpose of what's going on. Some clients will want you up front and center. If it's digital scribing, maybe projected onto the front screen. Some might want that for some elements of the event, say during the breaks, coffee break, lunch, but not while speakers are there. So I suppose that's about discussing the level of integration with the event that your activity, your visual scribing activity is going to have, and logistical things like the surface you're going to draw on, whether it's the side or the back of the room or at the front. Those kind of things. So paying attention to, I suppose comes back to the performative element, paying attention to those kind of physical factors. It's not just about the drawing, even on, it's about the surface you're using, how big it's going to be, how you're going to get it to the event, how you're going to get it to the workshop, how you need to collaborate with the other support teams at events, so team, where you have the opportunity to collaborate with them because they might want to incorporate you into their output. And that comes back to, I suppose, with documenting processes and whatnot. But film can sometimes be important there too.
Okay, and any other tip or recommendation for people that what to do with the visual material they created in the meeting? What after that? I mean, in terms of how to save it or how to build it as a memory, as I call it, a knowledge memory. Okay.
No.
I get frozen.
So if I'm drawing with pens on a big wall or any other surface, flip chart pads or whatever, I always leave the physical output with the client for them to do with what they wish, because it's part of their documentation and might be useful ongoing. Take pictures and process them in Photoshop to a white background. Add some basic shading just to bring out them. Don't change anything unless it's correcting mistakes and whatnot in Photoshop. And then you can send it JPEGs as well. So you get that kind of double output there for the client. That's if it's physical. If it's digital, then I suppose it's easier in many ways. You can save it out from whatever program you're using, capture the output. That's always important. I suppose save it out as a JPEG, so that it can go in whatever reporting documents or further work. I like this guy.
I mean, probably Photoshop it is not a formal verb. But I need it, and I don't care. I need it.
No, of course. I think that's a verb. Language is always evolving, right? That's kind of what we're about. We're a visual language that we're using. Yeah, Photoshop it. I will always. I mean, if it's a large surface, you have to composite the pictures and uh, use contrast management to delete out the white make it a white background, and turn it into a digital illustration, basically. Yeah, Photoshop's great for that, and other apps too are also good. I really like Procreate for the iPad. For that stuff. And then also for taking pictures, it doesn't need to be. Nowadays, you don't need to have a super duper camera, like an amazing camera. It helps, or it can help, but using a good smartphone with a decent enough quality camera with you can get a scanning app. So using a scanning app, they're really great. I love them.
Oh, sorry, Peter. It's just that I'm an analogical millennial. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. I've never heard that.
Let me correct it. Sorry. Okay.
Okay. No, I think that the picture that represents. It looks like it represents. Oh, yeah. I see.
Yeah, because you insist in talking about taking snapshots with in a digital way. Because okay, let's do it.
Yeah. And sometimes if you've got a super deep camera, it can discourage participants at the meeting, at the workshop, at the conference to take their own snapshots. And I like to encourage people to do that so that they can have their own memory of it. And then you're sort of providing an official version of it when you use Photoshop, make it look nice in post-production. Yeah, I like that.
Lovely.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Okay. Well, Peter, I think we made it in the first session. Let's go for the next section, that is the doodle challenge.
Okay.
Bueno, amigos, es como así comenzamos con la segunda etapa de la entrevista, que es el reto garabato. Y en esta ocasión le voy a pedir a Peter que dibuje improvisación, que represente visualmente qué es improvisación. Okay, Peter, the term that you're gonna draw is improvisation. And you have 1 minute to start from now. Okay.
Yeah. For the review?
Yeah, come on. All right. A color of, okay, paper, wax paper? That's interesting.
No, it's not toilet roll.
Okay.
It's duct tape.
Ah, okay.
That's why I had pain in my face. Yeah, that's why I was like, oh no, this looks like toilet roll, but it's duct tape, and this is meant to be it's just let me see.
It's okay.
Duct tape.
Just to get a little bit far. Okay, a little bit more.
And this is a shelf.
Okay, the shelf.
And this is a broken shelf.
Okay.
So this guy is looking at the broken shelf, and this is like an enlarged thought bubble or detail.
Yeah.
His solution is to get the duct tape, and that would be an improvised solution.
Okay. Okay. You nailed it.
Yeah, I don't think so. Duct tape. Wow, this is masking tape, but you know.
Yeah, but I mean, that is thinner than the draw. Okay, the drawing.
Yeah. That's yeah. Yeah. This is I don't have it. Here we go.
Okay, yeah.
Duct tape.
Yeah, the one that is used by the kidnappers. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, kidnappers. Yeah.
Just kidding.
It's like the Swiss Army knife of tape.
Yeah.
You can use it for anything.
Right.
Well, so yeah, it's good for improvisation.
That's improvisation, yeah, and it provokes the discussion. What did you draw? What
Sure.
does it mean? I mean, there's yeah,
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 I think so. Yeah. Why is he drawn toilet roll? Yeah. 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 This is good.
yeah.
Nice one.
Okay.
That's
So,
cool.
so
Well, cool. Thank you very much for having me on the thing to do. That was lots of fun.
yeah, thanks to you. But before we leave, please, Peter, share
Oh,
your contact information where people can find you for your work, or if they need graphical coding services or cartoon services, where can they call you or write?
so my website is petermorey.com and my Instagram is at Peter Morey Sketches.
Para todos nuestros amigos que quieran, pueden encontrar la memoria visual de las ideas de Peter Morey, pues nos pueden encontrar en las redes sociales que han estado apareciendo aquí y que también en la descripción del video lo van a poder encontrar. Entonces, despido a Peter. Muchas gracias a todos por vernos. Thanks, Peter. Thanks for this opportunity, for joining us, for sharing your knowledge, your great ideas. I'm pretty sure we're going to need more interviews in the future. There's so much topics. I don't know. There's so much material we need to talk about a lot.
Thank you for having me. That's been fantastic. It's loads of fun. That's cool. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Nice one.
So,
And I hope it's useful for your audience. Yeah, all of this stuff.
I'm pretty sure that they're gonna find it very practical, useful, and the idea is to help meetings more productive, engaging, and fun. Why not? Funny.
Cool.
So, okay. Entonces, gracias a todos. Nos vemos en la próxima interview. Thank you, Peter. See you.
Thank you. Goodbye. Bye, guys. Bye-bye.